overwhelming to even begin thinking about choosing a location for your wedding. So today we're talking strictly basics and how to start the decision of where to get married. Oh yeah.
Sound effects. The sound effects are back.
Yeah, sound effects are back. And
I'm very excited about that.
Better than ever.
They're about the same as ever, but that's okay.
So are you more excited about the sound effects or that we are preparing to launch in Nashville here soon?
Ooh,
and Tennessee.
I think Nashville. Can I get some sound effects though to go along with that? Like maybe some. You told me you could make studio clapping happen.
Did that pick up?
It doesn't sound like studio clapping. It just sounds like one single person clapping.
When we were doing budget planning, the sound effects, they got cut.
I'm pretty excited about our Nashville launch. We're headed down there next week.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Next week. Yeah.
Next week. Yep.
It's going to be great. By the time you guys hear this podcast, we will be gearing up. It'll be officially launching towards the end of February, beginning of March.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in Tennessee, get excited and go and sign up for free.
That's right.
Right on the website.
That's right.
bustld.com.
Wow.
You like that?
That was good.
That's not even like a shameless plug. That's just like a full-on plug.
You just went for it. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah. But go sign up.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. I can't wait. I haven't been to Nashville in a long time.
Not since Mark and Kate's wedding.
Yeah.
That was fun too.
Yeah, that was really fun. We had a really good time.
Yeah, I'm hoping to go see that venue.
It's gonna be a good venue. It's gonna be a little different these days. We're traveling down there with Chloe.
You mean we're probably not going to be going down Broadway at 2 a.m, not with fireball shots?
Right.
Right. We wouldn't do that.
Nope.
That's definitely not going to happen.
No.
Interesting. And then I'm headed down to Atlanta tomorrow for the bridal extravaganza,
which will have already happened.
But they do. Do they do 2 shows a year? I think so.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They have one, I think, in August or something.
If you're in Atlanta, go check it out. Shelly Dan's is awesome. We're really excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, and you can see more information about it on our site.
Is it called Bustld?
It is.
Nice. So, speaking of different locations.
On that note,
weird transition.
Things that you actually care about.
Right. Not our travel plans.
Would you like to know all the details?
Right.
Okay.
So, location. So let's first start talking about, when the house of worship.
Yeah. So the important part of the ceremony, like we talked about a couple episodes ago.
Correct.
The real wedding.
Right. It's
not the wedding parts you think of when you think about the wedding.
Right. It's not just about the cake and the dancing.
Right.
Contrary to popular?
I think popular.
Whew. Yikes. Anyways, so what if you want to incorporate religion in your ceremony?
So, I think you have a lot of options.
I thought you were about to ask me a question.
I was thinking about asking you a question.
I don't know if you want me clarifying questions here.
I don't know if I do either. That's why I stopped myself. But anyways, if you wanted to incorporate religion into your ceremony, obviously you can do that, whether you're in a house of worship or not. But if you're, wanting a little more traditional, then, doing it in your church or your synagogue or your place of worship is obviously a more traditional ceremony location than your reception venue or, yeah. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Do you have to be a member
of your house of worship?
Yes.
It depends. So I don't have a really clear answer for you. But
so you can't give me hard percentages?
No. But I mean there's a lot of different rules at different places. So some places you do have to be a member, some places you have to, maybe one of you has to be a member, some places both of you have to be a member. I was just talking to a couple who she's a member and he is not, and he has to become a member in order for them to get married at their church. So it just depends. I would say if you aren't a member of, a church or a place of worship, it's a little bit harder, actually, I feel like, to find a place that allows non-members to be a part of it. It's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But there are places out there, so you just got to look.
Yeah.
I know for us, when we were looking, we looked at a lot of places before we decided on our church.
Yeah. Our church here in Charlotte, St. Luke's, they'll accept people that are not members.
Yeah, they will, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's go check it out.
Check it out. Do you have to be the same religion if you're getting married in a house of worship?
Ooh, good question.
Tough question. Hard-hitting questions.
Hard-hitting questions. Depends. Is that like my favorite answer?
It
How
is.
many times do I say
Maybe.
that? Maybe. It depends on how strict probably your church is. Like I know with the Catholic Church, a lot of Catholic churches will require you to convert, although some of them won't. You know, some of them let you both not be the same. You don't both have to be Catholic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it just
But does one of you have to be Catholic?
Yeah. Yeah, at the Catholic Church for sure. But not, I mean, like at a Lutheran church, I don't think you both have to be Lutheran necessarily. So,
Right.
but some Lutheran churches you might, some Lutheran churches you might not.
Interesting.
So it just depends. I think that if you're interested in a church, it's probably just, best to like reach out and find out what their options are. And the first question I would ask is, do you both have to be members? Do you have any restrictions on, our religious beliefs? And then you'll know. And that'll be a good place to start.
Yeah, because that could be hard. I mean, what if you're non-denominational, or maybe you live in an area that doesn't have that same denomination,
Yeah, that makes it a lot harder, I think.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're not from there or something.
Yeah, especially if you're traveling, I think it's a lot harder. I think that's why, I feel like wedding ceremonies at churches and stuff are getting to be, are seeing less of them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of it. I mean, like if people are traveling, it's just easier. A venue, you can have your ceremony there. And of course, then you can obviously make your ceremony as religious or non-religious as you want.
Right.
If you're in like a regular venue for your ceremony location. So I do think that plays a part in it, because people are getting married in their hometown where they don't live anymore, or they're getting married in a destination, or one of them lives there, or, I feel like there's a lot more variations than like, years ago when
Right.
people got married in the town that they grew up in, kind of thing.
Right, and didn't just move around like we all do now.
Yeah. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on the venue piece here in a minute. Don't want you to jump ahead, but
Ooh.
stay tuned.
Better not go off script.
Right.
That's usually your thing, not my thing.
Yeah, I'm like just on point today.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it.
You need to focus.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Hit me.
Okay. So, can you have a reception in a different location?
Then your ceremony?
Yes.
Sure. Why not?
Cool.
Did you want more information?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, of course. Of course you can. I mean, it creates different pair of logistics that you have to think about.
Which is my next question.
Ooh, okay. I won't get ahead of myself then.
How do the logistics work?
If they're in different places?
Yeah.
It's just it's not more complicated. It's just another thing to think about. So you have to think about how your guests are getting from the ceremony to the reception, how your bridal party is getting from the ceremony to the reception, how you're getting from the ceremony to the reception, and like how long does it take? Now, I've had people who, have a hometown church and they want to get married in the city of Charlotte, but they maybe grew up in like Huntersville. So it's like a 45-minute drive. That cuts into like a lot of your time, like your photographer's time. They're still charging you for that 45 minutes. Your planner's time still charging you 45 minutes. So, those are things to think about with the logistics. And also the timing is another thing to think about.
Right.
A lot of churches have restrictions on times.
Like what?
Like the Catholic Church offers like a 2:00 ceremony. Some offer like a 5 or 6 o'clock, but I think it's usually 6 actually. So it's not like your ideal like 4:30, 5 o'clock ceremony. So you kind of have to plan your day around that. I don't remember. Did our church offer? Why did we get married so early?
They were doing multiple ceremonies a day.
Yeah. So that's another reason. So you might have restrictions. Maybe you have a short engagement and your timing is limited. I feel like we were the first people to book.
Yeah, I
We
can't
also
remember.
just wanted a break. We had the break between our ceremony and reception.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Well, the plan was to go take pictures in Central Park, and except there was, this hurricane, and the park was closed, and then we tried to go to Grand Central.
And it was closed.
Also closed, which I still can't believe they have keys for that. Like these are like those old school, like very old building, like they have to be
They're
crazy
like
old
huge.
keys.
Yeah, can you imagine they must have been like hoisting those
Yeah.
keys out
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
I didn't even know that happens.
Right.
That they lock up Grand Central.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I found that out on
Right.
our wedding day when we drove all the way down there.
Right.
But it worked out because our guests got to be on the most awesome bus tour from what I've heard.
That's true.
And they got to see literally all of New York City in a 3-hour time span, which can literally never happen before.
Right. You might get from 42nd to 45th
No, it wasn't even 3
Street.
hours. I think it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's pretty cool.
So like another thing to think about too is if like you want two totally different visions, like maybe it's not even a church. Like there's definitely couples who have gotten married. For instance, I think the wedding you did, they got ceremony in a park and then they had their reception in a brewery. Like cool, like two totally different views.
That was a cool wedding.
Yeah, two totally different like styles of ceremony and and the park was in the city, so they got to get that park feel, they got to get city photos, they got to get brewery like industrial feel, like so there's a lot of different reasons why you would want to. That
was July though, and it was like over 100 degrees. It was sweltering. That was rough.
Yeah. That was like, we just talked about season. Think about that. So yeah July is hot. So, I mean, also if you're having an outdoor ceremony in July, like it makes sense to only have your ceremony. Can you imagine if the reception had also been outside?
No.
Whew.
Yeah, it would have been tough.
Yeah.
So one thing that always strikes me is when you come home from a wedding where you're in multiple locations and you're trying to set up the reception, but you also have to be at the church and you have an assistant or assistants. But there's a period of time there where like, is it going to get done? Like, I mean, you're obviously the queen of wedding planning.
I like
no
it.
offense to everybody else out there that's a wedding planner. But
I mean, we've never had a problem. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. but seriously though,
seriously,
especially if you don't have a planner, like these are things you have to consider, like who's setting all this stuff up. And if you're going to have your aunt or your sister or your bridesmaids or whoever set things up, what happens while they're at the ceremony?
Especially if there's a break. Because if you have like a 2:00 ceremony and then your reception's at like 4:00 or something, let's say the ceremony ends, everybody's doing pictures, like you're going to have like, a lot of times your venue won't let you in until 2 hours before. So now you're literally, your venue's opening at the time your ceremony's happening. So definitely, it's something to consider. Whereas like if your ceremony's on site in that one location, you're kind of adding that time on the front end. So you have a little more flexibility. It doesn't matter. The last 45 minutes before the ceremony starts is always just like total
anarchy.
A little madness. Like everything's just like happening at the same time. That's just how it is. I love that moment personally, but I'm crazy.
So is there any other, we all know, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of touch on logistically that you need to think about if you're getting married in two separate, if your ceremony's in one place and your reception's in another?
Travel time. I know I said that, but make sure you think about it. I don't think people always allot enough time for travel. Like they're like, oh, it's Saturday. It won't be that much. Like there still could be traffic. It's not going to take you less time because it's Saturday. Like,
and if you're in a coach that's not going to move as snappy as like a Mini Cooper.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not going to be the same speed and all those things. So definitely give yourself buffer time on the transportation time. Also, if you like have all your guests are having to go and like get parking, like that's going to add time if you're not providing like the transportation. So think about that. And then pictures, think about the pictures, logistics. So a lot of churches give you like, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour after ceremony ends for pictures. So you're probably not going to be able to do pictures inside your ceremony. Inside of the church. So where are those pictures going to happen? So keep that in mind too.
That's all good advice. Do the ceremony and reception have to be the same day?
No, they don't. A lot of people are wanting to do intimate ceremonies, like very small, like immediate family.
I haven't heard too much of that other than like elopements like we talked about a few episodes ago.
Yeah. I feel like it's becoming a little more popular. It's very interesting. I would say if you're going to do like a small intimate ceremony and a big reception, I would probably actually recommend that you do them 2 separate days. That way you don't get any like weird hurt feelings.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to do like a small intimate ceremony and your home church, and then a couple weeks later do like a big reception with everybody. I've had a couple who got married, who did their like church ceremony, like with their close family, and then they had like a like more low key kind of like ceremony. It wasn't like as official. I think a friend married them kind of thing. And then they had their reception. So people still were like a part of it, but they did their like big, like religious kind of celebration prior. So that's kind of cool. There's no rules. Why not?
Yeah.
Change
I
it
love
up. Do what you
It's
want.
your wedding.
Yeah.
Pros and cons.
All right.
All right.
Go.
What are the what are the pros? What are the cons of? We kind of touched on a little bit of this.
Of
but
multiple locations.
yeah, we definitely touched on the cons.
So I think if you are religious and want something in like a traditional religious ceremony, whether that's for your sake or for your parents' sake or grandparents' sake, then of course that's a pro. I think personally, I like the break for pictures. It's
Right.
not ideal for maybe your guests. Although I've never minded it being a guest. Have you?
No, I kind of like it. It kind of breaks it up a little bit. It's not like you're rushing around.
Yeah, I kind of like it. Like you go to the ceremony, you come back, you kind of have a chance to
Relax.
change, have a drink, whatever, get ready, and then have a bite to eat. You're not kind of like at the whim of the schedule, which is
Right.
kind of nice. And it gives you enough time for pictures, so you're not literally just waiting around for people for pictures.
Right.
So depending on how you feel about that. Thinking about like the two different, you'll have two different locations for pictures. That can be a pro or a con, depending on your locations. And I think the biggest con to me is just when you have the two separate locations, it's a lot more movement. So kind of what you touched on, like there's a lot more logistics. People could get lost. People have to park twice. It's just, you have these setup restrictions and, one person's over here, everyone's over here at the ceremony, what's happening at the reception.
Right.
I would say if you have two different locations, you really strongly probably need at least a month of coordinator.
Some sort of coordinator.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So can you do it all in the same place, the ceremony and the reception?
Oh, I jumped ahead, didn't I?
A little bit.
I already said you could.
Yeah, you said
I already
you could.
gave you the
All right.
answer.
All right, moving on.
Okay.
What if the venue only has one space?
That does happen a lot, actually, I feel like.
It does. There's a lot more of those venues than people would really think.
Yeah. Or they might have like two spaces, but maybe the ceremony or one of the spaces is outside and they don't have like a backup plan.
Right.
So then in that case, you really have to talk to them about a flip. And who's going to execute that flip? Do they have the staff? Is it catering? Is it a planner? Like who is
And for those of us that are not
execute
wedding
it?
planners, what's a flip?
Oh, so that is where you will have the ceremony in the space and then everybody will leave and like go to cocktail hour in a separate area. And then while that's cocktail hour is happening, that ceremony space will become your reception space. So typically how it works is like, you might have a big room and maybe you have like drapery down the center or something like that. So you have your ceremony. Everyone goes to the other side of the drapery and has their cocktail hour. And while that's happening, the tables are coming out from somewhere else, kind of being dragged out to that main space. And then everything's kind of set in that cocktail hour. In that instance, you definitely need 60 minutes for cocktail hour. Can't do a short guy if you're doing a flip.
I did a flip with you one time
You did.
at an uptown venue.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
It's just a little extra madness.
It's stressful.
I say that with a flip, the biggest thing to keep in mind is if you have a band. I think that's when it really
This one had a band.
I think that's really when it becomes the hardest because
Yeah.
bands typically need a couple hours of setup time. It's impossible if you have a stage. You can do it. It's just that the stage is going to be a part of your ceremony setup in some way because you can't set a stage in an hour.
Right.
But I would say with a band, if you're planning to do a flip before you hire the band, make sure you talk to them about that.
Man, not even related to that. I remember that wedding so well because at that wedding, you were flipping a room and the band went and ate your and your assistants, not me, but your assistants' food.
Do you remember that I was also like 7.5 months pregnant at that wedding?
Yeah.
And then they ate my
And you
food?
only eat vegetarian, so it's like...
And then they ate my food and then I literally almost started crying.
Yeah, that was
I
bad.
also dropped the cake stand on my toe at that wedding.
That's
Remember,
right.
I had a bruise on my toe
That's
for
right.
like a year and a half.
I had to run out and get you food.
And I slammed my fingers in the doors. That was a rough wedding.
Yeah, that was a rough
Actually,
wedding.
nothing went wrong except for to me.
Yeah, true. It was a beautiful
It
wedding.
was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so crazy.
Yeah, it was just you.
Just behind the scenes myself.
Yep.
But the flip was perfect.
The flip was perfect.
And we had like 15 minutes to spare.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just not to eat.
Just not to Well, we could have eaten, but anyways.
Right. Anyways, sidebar. So what are the pros and cons of having it in one place versus another? I know you kind of hit a few of these.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have it's the same. It's like the opposite of the other problems, right? But you don't have all that movement. Everything is easier for you, for your guests, for your vendors, if you're all in one space. It just is.
Yeah.
You don't have the logistics of trying to move, 100, 200, 300 people between different locations and keeping everybody on the same schedule. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's easier for your guests for sure. I would say like a con though, is that it can be harder if you do want a religious ceremony. Your church may not offer, clergy or whatever who come and officiate at your ceremony. So you might need to find somebody. It just depends. I just found out there's a lot of churches that don't even offer wedding ceremonies, which is interesting.
Yeah. That makes me think, sorry, like just related to that is like transportation is so key in all this. We should get Faith from Peak Limo to come on. Okay. She'd be fun.
I'll write it down.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So for our couples.
To come.
Transportation. So in closing, as always, what are some tips for our couples as they're kind of planning out the location, logistics, as one, as far as the ceremony space, one space, two spaces, that sort of stuff?
I think first and foremost, you need to think about your guest experience.
Always.
Are they all traveling in from out of town and it's going to be really difficult, and budget doesn't allow transportation. And now you're asking them to drive 45 minutes and then 45 minutes. And then, so think about guest experience. I think also think about what's really important to you. Do you want like a more traditional religious ceremony, in which case you're probably going to want a, place of worship? Do you want multiple locations because you've always kind of envisioned this? Like, what have you envisioned? Like for me, I always envisioned like a church with a center aisle and like big doors, like walking down the center. Remember at our church, I had to fight them to like go down the center doors. They wanted me to go in the right doors. And I was like, no, that's not happening. Yeah. I'm going down those doors.
It was uncomfortable when you fought the pastor.
I wasn't the pastor. It was the church
kidding.
Lady.
I'm just kidding.
It's different. But yeah, I mean, like, what have you been envisioning? If that's the moment you've been thinking of, then of course you're going to want to lean that way, and then just think about that guest experience and how that's going to work out. If your church is going to be 45 minutes from your reception, should you offer transportation? How can you make things a little bit easier? So just things to think about along the way.